For 10 years, my family thought I was a broke contractor. Then they all tried to get into the tech company I secretly built into a Fortune 500 giant. When they walked into the interviews, their faces turned. You ever been underestimated for so long that it stops making you angry and just turns into fuel? That's been my life story, or at least the version my family thought they knew. My name's Nathan Price. I'm 57 years old. Founder and CEO of PriceForge Systems, one of the fastest growing enterprise automation firms in the country. But for over a decade, my own family thought I was just some broke contractor tinkering with busted laptops. They had no idea I was in our Price, the name plastered across tech headlines for years. I made sure they didn't. See, in my family, unless you were sitting in a leather chair at my dad's accounting firm, you weren't worth much. He built it from the ground up in the 70s and treated it like royalty. My older brother Todd, his golden boy, the heir. My little sister Rachel, dad's loudest hype woman, made partner at 29 and never let anyone forget it. Me, I was the screw-up with big ideas and no business cards. They never took me seriously, not once. And then came the day everything flipped. It started like any other. Coffee at my desk by 6, morning briefings wrapped by 8. I was catching up on our queue for hiring projections when Leon, my assistant, came barging in like he'd seen a ghost. He's usually calm, borderline robotic, but not that morning. "Sir, you're going to want to see this." He dropped a folder on my desk. Inside were 2 job applications flagged as internal referrals. I skimmed the names and I swear I had to double-check I was reading right. Todd Price, Rachel Price. They had applied for senior roles at PriceForge, not entry-level, not consulting, but executive management. I didn't say anything at first, just flipped the pages, scanned the resumes. Rachel was pitching herself as a tech-savvy strategist. Todd listed crypto innovation as a skill, and it didn't stop there. Leon hesitated, then handed me another folder. "Also, your father's firm submitted a proposal. They want to be our tax and audit partner." Their pitch meeting was scheduled for the next morning. Conference room, a 10th floor. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. Not with shock, not even anger. Just pure, cold clarity. After all these years, they finally wanted in. Not because they believed in me, but because they thought they could profit from me. I set the folder down, stood up and looked out the floor-to-ceiling window at Lower Manhattan. My company, my building, my empire. Time to remind them exactly who they forgot. 12 years ago, I was sitting at Dad's oak dining table in Newark. The house smelled like roast beef and cigar smoke. I had just turned 45, fresh out of my job as a systems architect. I thought maybe, just maybe, my family would finally listen to me. I cleared my throat halfway through dinner. "I'm starting my own company. Automation software. I've got a plan." Dad didn't even let me finish before he scoffed, blade clinking against his plate. "Automation? That's a lazy man's dream. Businesses need accountants, not robots." Todd leaned back in his chair, smirking like he was at a comedy show. "So this is it, huh? Your midlife crisis. Some guys buy a sports car. You're going to play around in your garage with wires." Rachel sipped her wine and smiled like she was humoring me. "Do you need me to help you budget this little project? I've got templates that might save you from drowning too fast." The table erupted in laughter. My own family. I sat there gripping my fork so tight I thought it'd snap. I didn't argue. I didn't beg them to see what I saw. I just nodded, finished my food, and drove home in silence. That night, I filled out paperwork for a second mortgage, put my house on the line. If nobody else believed in me, I'd gamble on myself. The next year nearly broke me. Days in the garage, nights doing consulting gigs just to keep the lights on. My hands cramped from coding, my back hurt from hauling servers. But I didn't stop. PriceForge was born on concrete floors and fast food wrappers. Every family gathering after that was heck. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, same script, different day. "So, Nathan, still chasing that tech thing? Hey, do you fix printers now or just reset passwords? Maybe next year you'll come back to the firm. Plenty of room for you." They said it with pity dressed up as jokes. The smug looks, the condescending smiles burned into me like scars. Not once did they ask, "What are you building?" Not once did they offer help. Meanwhile, I was building a monster, a platform that didn't just simplify work, it erased entire departments of wasted time. 5 years in, a Fortune 100 company signed with us. I remember wiring payroll that month, hands shaking, realizing I wasn't some garage dreamer anymore. I had a real company. 10 years in, we went public. I stood on that stage at NASDAQ under the name in our Price while my family thought I was still resetting routers for dentists. I let them believe it. I wanted them to. I'd roll up to Christmas in a 10-year-old Ford wearing jeans from Target. They thought I was scraping by. Meanwhile, my real life was a $15 million condo in Tribeca, 2,000 employees, private jet offers I never used because I preferred red-eye flights and coach. All those years I kept my mask on. They saw a joke. The world saw a billionaire. And the whole time I was waiting for the day they'd come knocking. Now, standing in my office with their resumes on my desk, I realized that day had arrived. I turned away from the window and called out, "Leon, get me everything on their applications and set the stage." Set the interviews, I said, and book them in the level 6 side room, the one we use for intern screening. Leon blinked. The small one with the cheap chairs. Exactly. No welcome packet, no coffee, no title drops. Let them think they're meeting mid-level staff. He nodded and left without another word. That's why I pay him well. He doesn't ask dumb questions. I sat back down and pulled up our org chart. My fingers hovered over the screen as I built the perfect panel. I wasn't putting just anyone in those chairs. First up, Marcus, head of platform engineering, grew up in Detroit, fixed machines to pay for school, built his career brick by brick. Second, Jess, our AI division lead, single mom, former waitress, now runs a team that's filed 8 patents this year alone. Last, Andre, director of client systems, ex-military, zero tolerance for fluff, asks questions that make people sweat in their seats. I smiled as I locked them in. My siblings were walking into a buzzsaw. That night, I stayed late. Everyone else was gone, but I pulled up their resumes on my second monitor, lit by the glow of the city behind me. Todd's read like a disaster in slow motion. After 20 years at Dad's firm, he'd convinced him to open a crypto advisory arm right before the crash, bled clients dry, burned cash like toilet paper, and bailed before the dust settled. His pivot to consulting was just fancy wording for scrambling. Rachel's was messier. She made partner at a firm in Boston, then tried to launch a personal brand around being a financial influencer. Got too loud, clashed with leadership, walked out before they pushed her. She tried it again at another firm in Chicago. Same story. Big splash. Fast exit. Now she was floating, calling herself a strategic growth advisor, which basically means unemployed with a Canva logo. And now they wanted in on tech, the same world they called a joke when I risked everything to enter it. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Hey Nate, think you can put in a good word for me at this company I just applied to, PriceForge Systems. It looks dope. I stared at it for a second, then typed back, I'll see what I can do. No emoji, no explanation, just enough to keep her walking straight into it. I shut down my computer, grabbed my coat, and took the private elevator down to the garage. Tomorrow, they were going to learn what it meant to walk into a world they never respected and see whose name was really on the door. I got to the office early the next morning. Didn't sleep much, just paced my apartment and played out the whole thing in my head over and over. By 8, I was at my desk, coffee in hand. 3 live feeds queued up on my second monitor, 1 camera inside the interview room, 2 in the hallway. Todd showed up first, 20 minutes early, hair slicked back, suit a little too sharp for a tech company. He walked in like he owned the place, sat down, and crossed his legs like he expected someone to roll out a red carpet. Rachel rolled in 5 minutes late, phone in one hand, overpriced purse in the other. Didn't even look up at the receptionist when she checked in. I could practically hear her gum cracking through the screen. The intern room on level 6 was exactly how I wanted it. 2 bright overhead lights, stiff plastic chairs, and a table that still had scratches from when we built prototypes on it years ago. First round, Marcus. He stepped in, shook hands, sat down with his tablet, and got straight to it. So, he said, tapping the screen, let's start with some basics. Tell me about your experience with back-end systems and cloud integration. Todd smiled like he'd been asked to spell his own name. Well, I've managed several developers over the years. My job's more strategic. I don't get into the weeds, but I know how to get results. Hung, Marcus said. Can you explain containerization? Todd blinked. Containers, like packing data for storage. Rachel jumped in. I'm more on the finance side, but I've worked with costing and budgeting for platforms that use automated decision trees. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What platforms? Rachel paused. Mostly proprietary systems, private firms. He didn't even hide his smirk. Right. Next question. They squirmed through the rest of it. By the time Marcus walked out, Todd was adjusting his tie every 2 seconds, and Rachel was scrolling her phone under the table. Second round. Jess. She walked in with a calm that made people nervous. She introduced herself, sat down, and started right where Marcus left off. Can either of you walk me through the difference between supervised and unsupervised machine learning? Rachel's mouth opened, then shut again. Todd jumped in. Well, AI is constantly evolving. The important thing is knowing how to leverage it for efficiency and long-term scalability. Jess didn't even blink. That's not what I asked. Todd coughed. Supervised is more like when there's a human touch point, and unsupervised is when it learns by itself. Okay, she said flatly, turning to Rachel. Do you know what an RPA is? Of course, Rachel said, smiling like a pageant queen. Revenue processing automation. Jess just wrote something down, stood up, and walked out. No goodbye, no smile. Final round, Andre. He walked in without a tablet, just sat down, and looked at both of them. What makes you think you can lead teams in a tech company when you've never worked in one? Rachel stiffened. We come from a business family. We know operations, strategy. Todd leaned forward. We're not some outsiders off the street. We know the founder. Andre stared at them. Do you? Rachel blinked. Yeah, it's Nate or Neil, something Price. Neil Price. Todd nodded like he was confirming a trivia answer. Andre tilted his head. That's your cousin or something? Rachel laughed nervously. No, we're just, close family friends. Interesting, Andre said, standing. That's all. He walked out. Neither of them moved. I sat in my office and watched them sit in silence. Rachel looked at the door like she wanted to chase after it. Todd tapped his knee non-stop. The smugness gone. Just two people who'd shown up expecting to be celebrated and got exposed instead. I leaned back, took a sip of coffee, and smiled. They still had no idea what was coming next. The feed shut off as Andre left the room, and that was my cue. I pushed back from my desk, straightened my jacket, and headed down to level 6. My footsteps echoed down the hall. Sharp, steady. This was the moment I'd been waiting for since that dinner 12 years ago. I opened the door just as the silence in the room was starting to choke them. Todd jumped up like a soldier caught off guard. Nate, what are you doing here? I walked past him, pulled out the chair at the head of the table, and sat down slow. I work here. Rachel frowned. Work here? I leaned forward, elbows on the table. Actually, I own the place. Rachel's face drained like someone pulled the plug on her. Her phone slipped from her hand and clattered against the table. Wait, you're in our price. Been me the whole time. Todd's jaw went slack. No way you're kidding. This is some kind of prank, right? Rachel let out a nervous laugh. Come on, Nate. Seriously, you, the founder. That's ridiculous. I pulled out the folder I'd been carrying, dropped it on the table, and spread out their resumes. You didn't get the jobs. You're not qualified, and you never once took my work seriously until you needed something from me. Rachel leaned forward, voice cracking. But we're family. I looked her dead in the eye. Exactly. That's why you should have believed in me instead of mocking me. Todd rubbed the back of his neck, sweating through his collar. Nate, look, if you told us... I cut him off with a raised hand. Don't I told you once, 12 years ago. You laughed in my face. You both did. So don't stand here now pretending it was a communication problem. Rachel tried again, softer this time. We didn't know. We just thought. Yeah, you thought I was a failure, and you like thinking that. It made you feel bigger, smarter, better. I pushed the resumes toward them. Now you know the truth, and it's not going to help you. Silence, heavy, raw. Todd stared at the floor, jaw clenched. Rachel blinked fast, like she might cry, but no tears came. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked to the door. My voice stayed calm. Leon will see you out. I didn't wait for their response. Didn't care. I opened the door and stepped into the hall. Behind me I heard Todd mumble something under his breath and Rachel whisper my name, but I kept walking. The sound of that door clicking shut behind me was cleaner than any applause. I didn't stop walking after I left the interview room. Just went straight to the elevator and hit the button for the 10th floor. My father's pitch meeting was already underway. Conference room. I sat at the end of the hallway, all glass walls and brushed steel. I could see them through the window. Dad at the head of the table, flanked by two junior partners. Suit jackets off, water glasses full, a printed deck in front of them. I pushed open the door. Dad looked up. First surprise, then confusion. Nathan, what's going on? Is everything all right? I walked in slow, pulled a folded copy of the Forbes article from my jacket and laid it down in front of him. The headline was bold and clear. The quiet rise of N.R. Price, the billionaire behind Price Forge Systems. He stared at it, blinked, then glanced up at me. What is this? I'm N.R. Price, Dad. He chuckled like I was pulling some joke. Don't be ridiculous. The junior partners leaned in. One of them picked up the article and scanned it quickly. His eyes darted between the photo and my face. Then he nudged the other guy, and without a word, they both started gathering their things. Dad's voice sharpened. You're telling me you built this company, that you run it? Yes, I said. And your kids just bombed interviews downstairs trying to get in. The door clicked behind the partners as they left. It was just the two of us now. He didn't say anything for a long minute. Just stared at the article like it might rearrange itself into something easier to swallow. Then, finally, in a voice that sounded older than I'd ever heard from him, he muttered, "Guess I misjudged you." I let that hang in the air. No, you didn't just misjudge me, I said. You ignored me. You never once asked what I was building. Never asked why I quit my job. Why I kept showing up to dinners with calloused hands and no complaints. You just assumed I failed. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it. I sat down across from him, leaned forward. You built your firm from nothing. I watched you do it. You taught me the grind and then punished me for using it my own way. He looked down at the deck in front of him. We were here to pitch. This was supposed to be a business meeting. It was, I said, but I'm shutting it down. We're not moving forward. He looked up fast, angry for a second, then confused again. Why? Because Price Forge doesn't do business on pity or family guilt. You're not getting in because you're my father. That's not how this works. His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. I stood, adjusted my cuff, and turned toward the door. Nathan, he called after me, softer this time. I stopped, didn't turn around. I was wrong. I nodded once. Yeah, you were. Then I walked out. Left him sitting there with a pitch deck he'd never get to deliver and a truth he couldn't dodge anymore. I stepped back into my office, shut the door, and sat down without turning the lights on. Just the city outside glowing through the windows. The room was quiet, but my phone wasn't. First came Rachel. A text popped up before I even sat down. I was a jerk. I get it now. I'm sorry. A few minutes later, Todd. Can't believe how far you came. We owe you an apology for everything. Then silence. I leaned back, stared at the ceiling. 10 minutes passed. Maybe 15. Then the third one came in. Dad, you proved me wrong. I was too blind to see your drive. I'm proud of you, son. I read it twice. Didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe more, maybe less. The three of them had spent over a decade making sure I knew where I stood in the family, outside the circle. The one with potential who just didn't get it. The guy who'd gone off chasing a dream instead of falling in line. Now here they were, all of them reaching back. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't hear them. I did, every word. But I needed time, not to process. I'd already processed it years ago, alone in my garage with busted servers and unpaid invoices. I needed time to decide what forgiveness even looked like. Because respect can't be retroactive. They had to mean it. They had to show it. So I set the phone down face down on the desk and let the room go quiet again. A week later I opened the doors to my penthouse for the first time. Not for clients. Not for business partners. For family. They all showed up right on time. Funny how that works. Rachel stepped in first, heels clicking on the polished marble, eyes bouncing around like she couldn't decide what to stare at. Is this where you live? Todd followed, mouth slightly open, neck craning up toward the 20-foot ceilings. Damn, Nate, this place is unreal. Dad came in last. Slower. He kept his hands folded in front of him like he didn't know where to put them. The dining room was set. Real silver, not rented. Flowers in the middle of the table. Leon had stocked the bar and kept things moving in the kitchen. Everything ran smooth. But before anyone sat down, I stayed standing. This dinner's not about patching everything up, I said. My voice cut through the room, even and firm. It's about starting from scratch. They looked up. Nobody smiled. Nobody tried to interrupt. You want a relationship with me now. It starts with respect. Not handouts, not assumptions. Respect. Rachel nodded first. Small, quiet. Then Todd Dad just stayed still. But he didn't argue. That was enough for now. We sat, food was served. But before anyone touched a bite, I told them the whole story. I started with the night I left my job, the second mortgage, the first prototype I coded on a $200 laptop that overheated if I ran it longer than 30 minutes. Rachel lowered her fork. Todd stopped chewing. I told them about the rejections, the 3 investors who laughed me out of their offices, the month I couldn't make payroll, the deal that fell through 2 hours before signing and almost wiped me out. No one said a word. I kept going. How I landed our first client doing back-end automation for a warehouse chain in Ohio. How that one job turned into a pipeline. How I hired 5 employees off Craigslist, paid them late, and built something that shouldn't have worked. Dad looked down at his plate. I told them about the night I got the email from the Fortune 100 company. How I sat on my garage floor and cried with exhaustion. How I used to shower at the gym and eat canned soup for days just to keep the lights on. Rachel wiped her eyes once, quick and quiet. I didn't sugarcoat the wins either. I talked about the IPO, the growth, the scale. The nights I still woke up at 3 a.m. to check error logs because that's what it took. They didn't interrupt. No jokes, no jabs, just listening. And for once, I didn't hold back. When I finished, I leaned back, took a breath, and looked around the table. I'm not hiding who I am anymore, I said. Not for anyone. No one pushed back. No one had to. Whatever happened next, it was on them. The article dropped a week later. Contractor turned billionaire built empire in secret. Even family didn't know. It went viral in under an hour. LinkedIn blew up. My inbox stacked with invites, messages, press requests. Former colleagues I hadn't heard from in years came crawling out of the woodwork. Engineers, managers, even my old boss who once told me I lacked vision. Investors started circling again, not because they saw something new, but because they finally understood what I'd built. Some university in California emailed me 3 times in a day, begging me to speak at their next leadership summit. I deleted the first 2, still considering the third. People asked why I never corrected my family sooner, why I let them talk down to me for so long. Truth is, it wasn't about revenge. It was about doing it my way, quietly, without needing applause. But watching their jaws hit the floor, yeah, that was a heck of a bonus. Todd texted me a photo of his new office. Small startup in Jersey, junior role, nothing fancy, but he said he was learning fast. Tech's not as easy as I thought, he wrote. Starting to respect what you built. Rachel's update came a few days later. She joined a mid-sized firm in Austin, entry-level product ops. It feels weird being the newbie, she said, but I want to earn it this time. I didn't respond to either right away, still letting them figure out if this change was real or just guilt talking. Then a package showed up at the office. Simple brown box, no note on top. Just a sealed bottle of 20-year-old Glendronach Scotch, the kind Dad used to drink after landing a big client. Underneath it, a folded card in his handwriting. You're the future of this family now. I'll try to follow your lead. Short, honest, for once, no lectures. That night, I took the bottle home. Didn't wait for a celebration. I cracked it open, poured one glass, and walked to the window. The skyline burned orange in the distance, late sunset cutting through the high-rises like gold. I didn't toast, didn't smile, just stood there feeling the weight of the moment settle.